Auburn football has fallen to Georgia in the 2021 season. The final score, 34-10 in favor of the Dogs. But how do we get here to this result? One way to break down the results for the game is to look at the stats. Let's take a look at the numbers and see what we take away from them. Welcome to the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. Our content here and on our podcast network may tend to be Auburn sports heavy, but if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you never miss any content. And thank you to members of our booster club like Linda Bird who help produce videos like this. So this is a brand new idea for a video, potentially series that I've been thinking about, and something that I think some of our viewers here on this channel might be interested in. Statistics are great. They help you get a few insights into the game, actually how it kind of all broke down, and maybe even answer some questions on why it broke down as well. But I will stress that statistics only tell you so much of the picture. There's so much ins and out and intangible things that can't be quantified in numbers and percentages that you can find out from just actually watching the game and film and not just looking at the numbers themselves. So I want to say that going in, but I do think there is some value in looking at statistics. So I do want to try that, and if you are viewers and subscribers enjoy this type of a video, please do let me know. We might consider doing more of it in the future after games. For disclosure, I will say that I'm getting my statistics from ESPN, whether you like that or not, but that's what we're going to be working off of and kind of using that to analyze why these statistics mattered in the game. We'll start off with team statistics, and we'll kind of just work our way down here and what kind of sticks out to me, starting with first downs. 22 for Georgia, 17 for Auburn. I'm honestly surprised there wasn't much more of a disparity between this, because it felt like Georgia was just cranking off first down after first down. And if you really consider it, they probably actually didn't break the tie with Auburn on the first down numbers until that last drive where they just kind of kept getting first downs to kind of put the game away. Third down efficiency, 5 for 13 for Georgia, 5 for 18 for Auburn. Now you can see that neither team was super great on third down. It was a defensive battle for at least part of the game, but Auburn was far less effective on third down in getting to move the chains, which is something that really you have to do, especially on your home field. If you can't be doing that on your home field, you'd expect the away team to have some trouble with that, and the crowds and the fan did actually play a somewhat of a part in that, but for your home team, got to be able to move the chains. Fourth down, here's the interesting thing here. 0 for 1 for Georgia, to be expected, right? Probably not going to be successful there as the visitors. 3 for 5 for Auburn on fourth downs. The thing that I find interesting about this is a couple of things, and I think this is a good example that when people focus on statistics and say, well, you're wrong about something, you can interpret things several different ways in the numbers, which is why I say it only gives you a part or maybe even half the picture of what actually happened. 3 for 5 for fourth down for Auburn. Now, you could look at that and say, wow, Auburn's pretty good on fourth down conversions. They did it when they had to. You're on your home field. That's great. However, why did they have to go? Why was it necessary to go 5 times on fourth down? That shows you the struggles that they were having on offense. So again, that's a way that you can really see where you can take a statistic and really kind of fine tune it down to what you're seeing, and somebody else might see it a different way. Total yards, 432 for Georgia, 318 for Auburn. You're going to see this differential here, which is just over 110 yards. The difference between Georgia and Auburn broken down and why it was that way in just a second here. It was actually a lot closer than I thought it would be. I thought Georgia had a few more yards than this overall. Passing-wise, fairly even. Auburn actually wins this one, 231 for Georgia, 272 for Auburn. Now, that's because basically every 2 out of 3 plays they were throwing the ball, so you kind of would think that you would get more yards. And we'll talk about efficiency here in just a second. So let's look at completion and attempts. For Georgia, 14 for 21. Auburn, 24 for 43. Auburn threw the ball twice as much as Georgia did, and it was clearly evident out there yesterday. The difference is that Georgia was way more effective with the fewer times that they threw the ball, getting 11 yards per pass to only 6.3 yards per pass for Auburn. And these were a lot of the passes that Auburn was throwing in this game. These flip outs in the flats to the tight ends, to the running backs, trying to get them some running space and running room. Not a lot of downfield balls, or at least success with downfield balls. There was one interception in the game, and this is another area where you look at that and you say, wow, Bo threw a pick. Well, actually, if I remember correctly, the running back was the one that was trying to catch this ball out in the flats and actually tip the ball up in the air, making it easier for the defender to go over and grab the interception. Not really the fault of the quarterback, because it wasn't that bad of a throw in my recollection. Rushing, this is where the differential comes, not just in the statistics, especially when you're talking about total yards, but in the game. This is where you really can look at. I said all along this game was going to be won in the trenches. Whoever controlled that was going to win the game. 201 rushing yards for Georgia, only 46 for Auburn. Rushing attempts, 49 for Georgia, 29 for Auburn. So you look at that and you say, well, Georgia almost doubled up Auburn in the times they attempted rushing, and you would think, well, yeah, of course they're going to probably have more yards, the same case that you would have with the whole passing situation. But again, look further into the numbers here. Way more effective with their rushing attempts than Auburn was. This resulted in a yards per rush of Georgia for 4.1 yards per carry and 1.6 for Auburn. That is so frustrating, and that is not going to win you the football game. Penalties, and this is one where it can be open to interpretation because I'm sure Auburn fans, maybe rightfully so, feel today that they were gypped by some of the calls in the Georgia game. 3 penalties for Georgia, which resulted in 18 yards lost. 5 for Auburn, which resulted in 34 yards lost. And most of the discrepancy comes from the non-calls that would have been for Auburn and some of the calls that would have been against Auburn that shouldn't have been called. We've already talked about the turnovers, but you got to win the turnover battle, and Auburn clearly didn't do that with no other fumbles or interceptions in the game besides the one that we've already addressed. Time of possession, big one here. Even though it's not a humongous discrepancy, it's still wide enough that you can see where this game was really pounded out on the ground, and the time on the clock was really controlled by Georgia. 33 minutes and 6 seconds, and only 26 minutes, 54 seconds for Auburn. Let's look at the box score for Auburn specifically and kind of look at some of the individual players. For Bo Nix on the day, 21 completions on 38 attempts. This is just my opinion and my preferences. I don't think Bo should be trying to throw the ball 38 times a game. I'd like to see 2/3 of that or at least half of that, but that's just my own personal preferences. He did get 217 yards out of it. So when you look at that, those two stats right there, it looks kind of good, but then look at the average, 5.7 yards per completion for him. 1 interception and a QBR of 39.7. TJ, his stat line really doesn't even factor into this whole thing since he came in garbage time at the end of the game. And that's not a shot at TJ. It's just when he was in there, the game was already in the hand. For rushing, and this just hurts me to look at it, Tank Bigsby, 10 carries for 28 yards and 1 touchdown. Now, I'm very proud of that touchdown because a lot of good things happened on that play, even beyond Tank. But still, 2.8 yards per carry. That should never be happening. Jarquez had a very modest game compared to what we're used to for him, although he did have one of the longer runs, which was only 9 yards. Bo Nix having the other 9-yard run. Shaun Shivers, arguably in terms of efficiency, was the best running back on the day. Only 4 attempts for 16 yards, but that is 4 yards per carry. He continues to be a very versatile and integral part of this offense that we have to continue to lean on. Wide receivers. Of course, when you throw that much, you're going to have a lot of wide receivers, hopefully getting completions, but also getting multiple attempts at them. Demetrius Robertson is probably the best overall receiver, although if you go back and look at the tape, there's probably more frustrations there than just getting the 4 receptions and 59 yards that he got. Kobe Hudson was pretty solid as well. 5 receptions for 50 yards. Those 2 leading the way. And I would argue that Shed Jackson, even though there was one at least, maybe another bad drop that he had, he did some things that I think go beyond his 2 receptions for 37 yards that were very important. Go look back at his block on that touchdown run for Tank and tell me that we don't score if he doesn't make that block. A couple other sightings needs to note. Kaelin Newton with his brother in the audience, getting to watch him play, gets a pretty big yardage, 31 yards on his 1 catch that he had. And you can look further down here with so many other guys getting some receptions and things. Those are the main ones that kind of stick out. No fumbles on the day for either team, and only the 1 interception, as we already talked about. Defensively, Zion Puckett leads the way with 10 total tackles, 5 solo, followed closely behind by Bradarius Knighton with 9 total and 6 solo himself. And then, of course, Chandler Wooten, who's really stepped up with Owen Papo not being able to be there in recent games, gets 8 total tackles, and 5 of those are solo. So those are the guys that really led the way for Auburn tackling-wise. Look a little bit further down on this list here, and you'll find not only Smoke Monday, because he was ejected rightly or wrongly early on in the game, Zachary Mclean with only 3 total tackles and 2 solo tackles, which was very interesting to see. You have to wonder if he had been a little bit more effective, maybe himself, or just because they were playing him very well on the offense, this might have been a different story of the way he can really change the dynamics of the game. Got to shout out Iku Leota for his sack that he had of Stetson Bennett, which really got the crowd going and thought might be an emotional turning point in the game. And then, of course, you can look further down the list and see the breakdown of everybody else. The only other one that I want to point out is that Derek Hall was also down towards the bottom with only 2 total tackles. Thought he might have been a little bit more of a factor in the game. So when you combine the lack of Derek Hall production, the lack of Zachary Mclean production, and the loss of Smoke Monday, you can really start to see a picture of why the defense struggled at times during this game. As tends to be the case this season, the special teams tend to be the brightest spot. For kick return, Sean Shivers had 1 attempt along with Jarquez Hunter, who had an attempt both with 15 yards. Demetrius Robinson only fielded 1 punt, which he was not able to return. Anders Carlson, perfect on the day, 1 for 1, and on extra points. His field goal was only 24 yards long, a basic chip shot for him. Big props goes to Oscar Chapman, who put Auburn in a much better position than it could have been with 6 total punts, 276 yards total, which is a 46 yardage average for punts. His longest of the day, 52. Way to go, Oscar. So that's the breakdown of the stats and just some of my overall thoughts as we were going through them. Now, what I want to know from you is what you thought about these stats and what sticks out to you. Now, remember, just because you might have a different opinion than myself or someone else doesn't mean it's necessarily wrong or that you're wrong as well. We can all interpret and see things differently. That's the beauty of having opinions about this. But I do want to hear what you thought about all this and even my thoughts about it in the comments section below. If you enjoy this type of content, please help support it by smashing that like button. And if you want more content, be sure to hit the subscribe along with the notification bell so you never miss an upload or live stream. Be sure to check out the description links for ways that you can help support our content here, like becoming a channel member or even a Booster Club member. Thank you for tuning into the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. War Eagle.